Welcome to Making Your Miles Count Production, an educational program to all Canadian lease owner-operators with your host, Robert Scaper.
Welcome to Making Your Miles Count podcast, and today we have a great topic about Canada Pension Plan versus dividends. And I'd like to introduce my panel with me again today. A bunch of potential retirees. My brother Dan Scaper. Potential
Peter.
Potential Peter. Peter Funk. You guys are both older than me. You're 62.
We won't go there.
No.
Yeah. We'll just call this the senior tour.
The senior tour. It is. We'll go through a little bit of a history of both CPP and all of the different options you have. There's a big question out there. What do we all do with our CPP? And a lot of truck drivers, actually most of them, are over the age of 40, 45. And they're generally about somewhere between 45 and 60. There's actually a fair bit that are over 60 already now too. So everybody is sort of thinking along the lines of retirement. And realistically, let's deal with this kind of sort of one time, if at all possible. There's some things about CPP we won't even deal with, some of the peripheral, but I want to get the leverage, the one or few things that you absolutely have to know, and then you say, okay, based on that, this is how I'm going to make my choice and decision. I brought a clipboard because there's so much stuff that we're going to go through. I can't keep it all in my head, so that's why I have a clipboard. Plus, I look so much more important with a clipboard. It looks like I really know what I'm doing. Okay, so one of the big questions is a number of years ago, I had after my first book was written, a lot of popularity. I got a lot of phone calls from it. There's one guy, can't remember who he was from. I think he was from Saskatchewan, but maybe not. And he called me up and he said, "You're doing it all wrong. You're doing it all wrong." And well, I said, "What exactly am I doing wrong?" And he said, "I just do nothing but dividends. I don't handle anything. I don't believe Canada Pension Plan is a pension plan. It's all just a tax." And I go, all right. And there is a lot of disinformation about dividends and Canada Pension Plan and stuff like this. And I want to straighten out a great deal of this. Realistically, I'll give you the bottom line. That guy was wrong. And not a little bit wrong, as an awful lot wrong. My first book deals with non-taxable benefits, and it's a way in which you pull money out of your corporation tax-free, and it's 100% tax deductible for your corporation. How in the world can there be, there's nothing, period, nothing that touches the system, the non-taxable benefit system in the trucking industry as it's applied to trucking. There's nothing that compares to anything that is the best way to reduce taxes. There's nothing. It's basically converting taxable income into a non-taxable benefit, and it's a phenomenal system. That's why I wrote the book. I wouldn't actually be even in the accounting industry if it wasn't for non-taxable benefits. I would actually do a bunch of other things. I would love to have studied Six Sigma research and stuff like this and do a bunch of other stuff. But when I first, the light came on with non-taxable benefits, and I saw the huge effect that non-taxable benefits would have in the trucking industry, specifically independent operators, I said, man, this is a system that pretty much sells itself. I don't like to be a salesman, and I said, look, we can save you $12,000 a year, $1,000 a month if you use this system. And I just said, yeah, man, I want to save the trucking industry bunch of money. And out of that came my BHAG, which is big, hairy, audacious goal, and which is to save the independent operator industry in Canada $1 billion in taxes. That's my goal, personal goal. And
So where are we at?
We are right now, as just the last month, we just climbed over $71 million in tax savings from our clients.
Good. You got room to go yet?
Yeah, 7.1%. That's not even 10% in 18 or about 20 years. Well, since I started collecting the data was 2006, so we're 18 years. So in about 225, 230 years, I should reach my goal.
There you go.
But I still think I'm going to reach the goal, but I just change it. We instead of us doing it ourselves, we have the software to do it, and we'll have other accountants using the software so that because it's very, very difficult to implement non-taxable benefits without technology. I don't want to say impossible, but it's certainly not scalable. And accountants would have to charge way too much for it, and some of the savings would be eaten up by additional costs of administration. And anyway, that's a different topic. But let's start just with that phone call that I got from this guy who says basically that dividends are way better than a Canada pension plan, and the logic is that if you use dividends, you are CPP exempt, which is absolutely true. You do not pay Canada pension plan on dividends, and Canada pension plan works out to, if you pay both the employer and the employee portion, it's about 9.5%, maybe 10, but let's say 9 to 10%. Okay, and which sounds like, my goodness, you save that 10%. The only thing is, you cannot issue out dividends from your corporation unless first you pay corporate taxes. You can only issue out dividends on retained earnings, and retained earnings can only build retained earnings on prior year's income. So that means you first pay corporate taxes, and then you can do dividends. Then the question is, how much are dividends, or how much is corporate taxes? And depending on which province you are, it ranges anywhere from 9 to 13%. So you're paying 9 to 13% for the right to not have to pay Canada pension, which is 9%. And so you either pay corporate taxes and get zero benefits whatsoever from corporate taxes. Nothing, you don't get anything back from it. It's gone. It's disappears. Or you pay Canada pension plan and get, well, some sort of benefit from it. Like there's some sort of effect when you're, 60, 65, 70, whatever it is. And so the logic that he had was severely flawed. He didn't think about the taxes that were applicable for it. Now, I don't want to get too in-depth in numbers, because when it comes to taxes and everything, the more you get into it and the more specific you get, the more a whole bunch of different rules apply, and it just complicates everything. But the bottom line is, you do have to pay once, if you say, okay, I pay either the Canada pension plan, dividends, so that's about the same. But now you have to pay. Now you only have to pay dividend tax, and now you have to pay just regular tax on income. And there's a difference, right? Because dividend taxes are slightly lower than regular taxes, and that is true except for one thing, and that is, when you get T4 earnings, if your earnings is very, very low, it's a very low tax rate. And the more you make, the higher it is. And there is a point where it matches the dividend tax. And the combination of everything, the corporate tax and the dividend tax, balances right around $60,000 to $70,000. So if you're making more than $70,000, well, then you can maybe start thinking about dividends. Because if you're making, well, let's say, out of the trucking industry or whatever, you're making $150,000. Well, your tax rate is whatever, 40, 45%, 46%. And that's if you're T4ing the whole thing. Well, if you had an option to do with dividends, well, now you're only about 28 to 30% or 35%. So then you stop taking a wage above 70 and you start working with dividends. So there's different rules that apply there. But generally what we have an audience of independent operators, truck drivers, and the national average of earnings is somewhere between $60,000, $65,000 or $70,000.
That's for company drivers, or
that's company drivers and independent operators as well. Everybody makes very similar. According to Canada Revenue Agency, statistically, whether you're an independent operator, owner operator, or T4 driver, you make the same. That's statistically there. They don't split it out into different areas from there. Now, what they don't see is the effect of non-taxable benefits. We can get into that a little bit later, because then your income drops significantly. It goes from 60, 70,000 down to 30, 35,000, and your tax rate is much lower. So you can lower it much. But according to Canada Revenue Agency, whether you're a T4 driver from a carrier or an operator, 60, 65, that's national averages in there. So realistically, when we're talking about dividends, under like 98% of the time, owner-operators don't have to worry about dividends. Very, very few. There's a few exceptions, and that's if individuals want to live very, very cheaply, and they want to keep a whole bunch of money in their corporation for a much longer period of time. Let's say they want to save. I have a couple of clients, for instance, they work on the oil fields and very high specialty stuff, and they're making $120,000, $150,000 a year, but they only claim income. Their T4 income, let's say it's 60, and then they pay corporate taxes on the rest of it, and all that money stays in the corporation and it builds up. And one of them went out and he bought a apartment block and stuff like this, and started building up assets within his corporation. That's a different approach to taxes than just what the average independent operator is, which is, you drive your truck, you pay your taxes. You drive your truck, you pay your taxes. And 80% of all corporations in Canada show a zero income. And that's pretty much what happens in the independent operator industry as well. Your corporation, under a vast majority of times, should be showing a zero income. You claim all the income yourself, and there's zero value in your corporation. That, as an independent operator in the trucking industry, that's what should be happening the vast majority of the time.
Sounds like I'm doing just fine.
Yeah.
Everything's right in there. Yeah.
Right in there.
Those, my numbers are matching.
Zero.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I've talked about in prior podcasts that I've actually changed my philosophy on Canada Pension Plan this year. I actually I'm taking dividends. Mm-hmm. And that's because I have retained earnings from a different corporation, from a real estate stuff, and I want to use up some of those retained earnings. So I do a little bit of, I guess you would call it fiddling, with a little bit of salary, very little low rate salary, and dividends, and so I'm a little bit more flexible. But once those retained earnings are down, which would take 2-3 years or something like that, because things move back and forth or so, then I might just go back and I might change it or so. But I want to utilize as much as I possibly can. Once I'm past 65, then I don't have to contribute to Canada Pension Plan anymore. Well, then I can go back and do something else differently. But that's fine tuning a lot of your income tax, and I'm saving a little bit, but is it worth the effort? Well, for me it is. I think it is, because it doesn't make a huge difference for me.
Well, you don't have to pay the guy to do it either.
Yeah, I can do all the figuring out myself. And
would there be enough
But I have a significant amount of real estate.
Okay, yes.
and so
Which
I'm
the
not an
average
independent operator,
right,
so it's a little bit. I had to have, well, didn't have to have real estate.
Yeah.
But in my business,
it worked out.
it's different. You know, it's not like I make a ton of money, but I do make more but it's not related at all to trucking. It just
Right. Yeah. Okay.
in there. That's and I have some friends, for instance, who make 6-7 figures every year, kind of a thing, and the rules that they operate in are much higher above me. You know, one of the biggest things, and this is a rabbit trail, I know, but if a corporation makes more than $500,000 a year, okay, a lot of the rules that generally, like a lot of the structure, completely changes, and you go completely backwards because now you're no longer in a small business category. And there's a specific name. I can't even remember what it is. We're on a rabbit trail. I don't have it in my notes. But if you make less than $500,000 a year, you pay generally between 9 and 13% corporate taxes. But the minute you make more than $500,000, anything above $500,000, it actually then you're taxed at whatever it's 28, 30, 32, 35. What I can't remember offhand. It's just a huge jump. We're talking 20% in there, and it's not on the whole amount, but anything above on there. So the rules change, and you have to combine a whole bunch of, if you own a whole bunch of corporations, and you have to add the income from all of them to find out if you get to that $500,000, and then they keep track of everything, so you can't hide a little here, hide a little there, or whatever. No. I still believe after studying it, it's unbelievably complicated and complex, but it is designed to be as fair as possible. Like even for instance, the whole aspect of should you do dividends and should you do T4 earnings, where the general rule is what they're trying to do is, whether it's dividends or whether it's T4 earnings, it's supposed to be the same. You know, it's guided by the same. The only time when it's not is when you have very low income or something like this. So you have to know what you're doing in order to get the best fit for you. If you unfortunately do dividends rather than T4 earnings one year, it's not going to, if you're looking at earnings of $60,000-$70,000, it's not going to make a huge difference. You're paying, a few $1,000s, and so it's not a huge amount at that point. You can make some mistakes, so to speak, but it's not huge deal breakers under general.
Somebody that hasn't watched the podcast from previous, can you just explain a little bit of what dividends are?
Dividends are the earnings from your corporation. Everybody knows what a T4 is, because let's say you drive truck and all the income goes into your corporation, and then you have to pay yourself. You give yourself a salary in what we teach, also non-taxable benefits, and let's say you don't use non-taxable benefits and you take out a salary that equals $60,000, and but your corporation makes $100,000, so you're in the top 2% or something like that. Well, you pay taxes on the $60,000, and so maybe you take home $40,000 or something like that, whatever it's $38,000, and so but the other $40,000 in the corporation, you have to pay taxes on that. So that would be about $4,000. Let's say it's about $4,000. But then that income then, after tax income, has to stay in the corporation. It's not yours. Even though you own the corporation, it's not yours. If you want to take it out, which would be $36,000, that's what's left after the corporate taxes, you can take it out. but it has to be classified as dividends. That's what's called dividends. The return on because you own the shares of the company, and you just declare dividends on those shares and you take it. But then there's what's called dividend taxes. So there's two levels of taxes under a corporation, a corporate tax and then a dividend tax before it actually gets into your own pocket, so to speak. So there's two steps there, but there's only one when you're doing a T4 earnings. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All righty. Good stuff. Okay, so that is that. Now let's talk a little bit about Canada Pension Plan. Pretty much everybody understands it. The guy that I talked to, I think he was out of Saskatchewan, he says, oh, no, it's a great big Ponzi scheme. You know, everybody's putting money in, and then they turn around and there's no money in there in the end, okay? There's an argument for it and stuff like that, but realistically, the first thing we have to state is that Canada Pension Plan is an independent corporation. When you send money into Ottawa for your Canada Pension Plan, it doesn't go into the control of the Prime Ministers and the finance people. They take that out and they give it to the Canada Pension Plan Fund. And they've been doing that since 1966. Okay, it's a separate corporation. And when the government when the federal government runs, say, a deficit or so a lot of people say, well, yeah, they just take it from Canada Pension. No, they can't. Legally, they cannot take it. It's a separate entity from the regular finances of the federal government. Now, in the United States, they have old age security, okay, or social security or whatever they call it. They do not have that system that we have. That is in their general fund. It's just a promise. We're going to give you that, and when you send in money into Social Security, or when the people send money into Social Security in the United States, it just goes into the general fund. That is way more of a Ponzi scheme than it is in Canada. There's actually seen some just last week. Some senator or somebody down the States, they said, we want to privatize our security, our pension plan, and separate it from the general fund. And he says it would take $1.5 trillion out of the general fund, put it into it, and separate. And he says it's a great idea because this country, that country, and Canada, that's how they've done it. And I remember thinking, oh, well, we're just about to talk about CPP, and this is they think it's a great idea, which is a great idea. Yeah. It's out of out of the hands of the politician. Meanwhile, they've spent everything in the United States, and everything there is upside down. Now, so in the States, it's much more of a Ponzi scheme, and I have no idea how they're ever going to get out of that. But I guess just print money, I guess, eh?
That works. That works.
It's worked before. Yeah. Anyway, old age security is another thing. When you retire, you have Canada Pension Plan, you have old age security, and you have guaranteed income supplement sometimes. Old age security is not a separate account. It is in the general fund of our country. Okay. It's set up identical to what they are in the States, and that's a separate issue.
That's why they raised it to 68 from 65 in Canada.
Did they?
Yeah. Now they want to raise it up over 70.
Is that talk? I haven't heard that yet.
You and me, we have to now wait till 68 to collect it.
Oh, man. Okay, no, we're going to have to fact check on this because I did not hear that.
That's been in already for years.
No, 65 is old age security.
Nope.
I was 68. Looking at really?
Yep.
Well, that's a Googleable question. A simple Googleable question. I don't Googleable.
Yeah.
Or Bingable. I like bingable better.
Yep.
It's easier to say. My tongue doesn't get tired. It's a bingable question, basically, and the old age security is 65.
65.
And so you're okay?
I'm good. I'm retiring now.
You're okay, though.
Yeah.
So we solved one person's misinformation and...
brought that end zone right in there now.
Only,
Nice.
only 39 million more.
Didn't even have to get cataract surgery. I see clearly now.
Oh,
And I feel good.
So old age security, you have to be 65 in order to collect it. Now, the thing about old age security is if you can take it earlier. No, sorry.
No?
You take it, but if you delay it to 70, you get a higher amount.
Higher
Correct.
rate, yeah.
Okay?
That's
But-
with CPP too.
The CPP goes back to 60. You can collect it at 60.
Correct.
But it's really low, and then you get you get a higher amount at 70.
Right.
Okay, it's sort of like an accordion there. Old age security, you can get it higher at 70. But if you run the numbers, the difference between 65 and 70, the extra little bit that you get isn't worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say get it at 65. Sooner you get it, the better.
Can you still work, be employed, and still collect old age and Canada pension?
Yes. The only thing is it's taxable. You just pay more tax.
Okay.
So it is that way. Then there is the third category. You have to be in Canada. If you're living in Canada and retiring, you have to be in Canada for the last 10 years. But if you're outside of Canada and that's where you want to retire, you have to have been in Canada for 20 years.
Yeah.
So anyway. The final category is guaranteed income supplement, and that's for individuals who have no other income. You don't have a job on the side or anything like that, and your income is low. There's a kick in that helps you with a little bit more. I know dad gets that, and mom and dad get that.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it then. So some people get it, some people don't. But if you work on the side, you don't obviously get it because it's actually a disincentive to work because because if you work a little bit, you automatically don't get the guaranteed income supplement all the times. Depends on how much you get. That's why you get a lot of old people who love to work for cash.
Yeah,
because you can't, or whatever. Anyway. Now, let's go back to Canada Pension Plan. It's a separate corporation. And we can think of it as a mutual fund, and a mutual fund. Well, you say, okay, it's managed by the government. How terrible can that be as a mutual fund? And actually, they are actually very good at getting a return on their investment. They've been averaging somewhere between 8-9.5% return on the money that goes into there. So it's actually very, very well done and very respectable. And so, from a general attitude of government being efficient, that's probably the only exception, and that's because it's completely you can't meddle into it. Like a politician can't meddle into that, other than what they put into it and what they take out of it and they have to pass laws for it. They can't meddle in anything on there. So, all right, now. The next real question is, who is responsible for your retirement? Why do we even have Canada Pension Plan in the first place? Like I was in India a little over a year ago, and they don't have, for the general population, they don't have they don't have India Pension Plan or anything like that. It's you basically have to think for yourself in terms of personal survival. Like they don't have they don't have welfare system, they don't have anything to help their people that much. There might be a few little programs here and there, but not nearly what there is in Canada. Like our welfare and our social assistance, we are much more socialism oriented, where basically the collective takes care of the smaller or smaller income people. But in India, there's no such thing, and that's generally what if you're in an environment like that, if you don't work, you don't eat. And so you are entrepreneurial to start off with. You have to make your money today. You have to have some sort of, and so they're very, very entrepreneurial in the entire country there. I really appreciate that. That's phenomenal. For the most part, even Mexico is like that too. They don't have very of any significant socialistic situation. So they're much harder workers, generally speaking. And I personally don't think Canada Pension Plan or a lot of the government programs that we have, it ends up being a little bit more of a disincentive like that. Now, Canada Pension is not necessarily a disincentive because realistically, we should all be thinking about retirement. Generally, though, people don't think about retirement until they're 45, 50, and then they say, "Oh, God, goodness, what I don't have two nickels to I got to start doing something." And to some degree, it's once your kids leave the house. Well, okay, now it's just you and your wife or your spouse, and you're sitting there going, "Okay, well, maybe we should think about retiring." Well, what do we don't have two nickels to rub together. Maybe we should start doing something, right? And realistically, the government back in Canada Pension Plan started in 1966. As you have to back up a little bit further, when all of the young people came back from World War II, they were about 25 years of age, 25 years of age, and they got married, started having kids, and started working. Now, in 40s and 50s, in Canada, there was an unbelievable amount of corporations that had pension plans. There was a lot of unions. Unions was a huge percentage of the population, or a lot more higher percentage of unionized work and stuff like this. And since the 40s and the 50s and even 60s, they were still quite heavy into unions in Canada, 50s, 60s, 70s. It wasn't until about the 80s, really, that the general market that's out there said we're moving away from pensions, and everybody is on their own. And that's a gradual process. So we have to realize that a 25-year-old kid coming home from World War II, gets married, and basically around 20 years later, he's 45 years of age. That's when he starts thinking retirement. And that's exactly when the government says, "Hey, wait a minute, everybody's panicking on retirement. Let's solve that problem for them." And so that's when they instituted Canada Pension Plan, because nobody was saving any money. So the government answered the panic of the average 45-year-old person, and said, "Oh, we'll have Canada Pension Plan." Now, because there was also a move away from unionization, there was some pressure that way. The primary reason why Canada has always been very high in unions compared to the United States. Now, in the United States, very, very small percentage of workers actually have union representation. It could be down to 1% or a single-digit percentage of workers, but it could be higher. But it's certainly not very high at all in the United States. We would generally be 2.5 times what United States is when it comes to unionization. That's a different topic. Maybe we could discuss it. When it comes to retirement, there's basically what in 1960s and 70s. There's two types of benefits. There is a defined benefit, and then there is can't remember what the other thing was, but it's a non-defined benefit. Okay. Canada Pension Plan is designed as a defined benefit. You contribute to this, and when you get this age, you're going to get this dollar figure and this cents. This is exactly how much you're going to get. Okay. The other one, I can't remember what the other, it's probably like a non-defined benefit, okay, which is you throw a whole bunch of money into an RSP, for instance, and it goes up and down the stock market, up and up or whatever. And when you get to 65 and you say, okay, now I want to take 5% out every year. Well, it's not going to be the same every year. It's an undefined benefit. You're going to take a certain percentage out of it in order to do it. And so there's two very different mindset when it comes to pensions. And the difficulty of defined benefits are the pension plan itself has to make sure that it makes enough money to cover all of the defined benefit. And if you're in you're in a union or you're in the government and you say, hey, I want $4,000 a month in my pension, okay? And you really pressure the boss, and the company says, yeah, okay, we'll give you that when you're 65, 70, whatever it is. Now it's the responsibility of that pension plan to make sure that it has enough money. First of all, it has to make sure you pull it out of a little bit out of the employee, possibly, but also the company that it's working for has to contribute to that pension plan to make sure that it gets that 4,000. Okay, unions for teachers are an example. You want to you put your 25, 30 years in, and you get X defined benefit for that. But it is the responsibility of unions, like the teachers' unions, to make sure that their pension plan is fully funded, so that they're going to be able to meet those obligations, because those are actual obligations. If you don't meet those obligations, that's when you start having crisis, and like so. It's having a defined benefit pension is extremely risky, sometimes unbelievably costly. And that's why in the United States, where they used to be 20-30% unions or something like that, maybe not that high, 30, but they're now down to 10% or less, because they realize that is way too expensive of a system. We can't
sustain that.
Yeah, you can't sustain it.
Yeah.
And Canada Pension Plan is the same way. It is a defined benefit that is there, and that's where all of the real controversy comes in, because the pressure is hard on the government to make sure that there is solid funds there for the retirees. Now, that's pretty much when it comes to different types. Like there's unionized companies, and but the majority of the unions in Canada is actually government. Whether it's federal, provincial, municipal, city, or whatever, a lot of the actual unionization in Canada is government-oriented. And they're the ones who pretty much have defined benefits. Maybe not all of them, but there might be some exceptions. And that's really expensive that way.
Just a little side note, and it's only because, over the last few years, with getting ready to slow down, retire, whatever, and also going through the retirement and downsizing with our mom and dad, right?
Yeah.
I remember growing up, and as far as I'm concerned, and I think you would say so too, our dad is probably in the top 1% of independent, motivated,
minded individuals,
whatever you want to call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a kid saying, you know what, he's got to pay into CPP, but when he gets there, he's not counting on that at all. Because how can you guarantee anything with a government being changed every 4 years?
Yeah.
An industry that there is no guarantees that job is going to be there. Like you're making promises with no way to guarantee anything.
Yeah.
Like whether you can make the numbers work or not is totally a sideshow. I think, that doesn't mean that I got it right, because I am not in that same category that Dad's self-funded, and his retirement money that he gets from the government, he feels he's wealthy. He can live off of that. And I'm going, holy crap.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. When it comes to, if you're looking at retirement, you say, I got Canada Pension Plan, Old Age Security Guarantee, investments. I can sit down and how much do you actually get? And that varies considerably depending on how much you put in.
Yeah.
And for how long in there. But there is a very long, complicated formula for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to go into the formula.
And you know it because you just went through it. Right?
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't even go to it. I just know there's a couple of rules to it.
Yeah.
For instance, they knock off the lowest 8 years to run a formula, but all the rest, basically, the vast majority of it has to do with how much have you contributed, and then you run it. If you've been poor all your life and you've barely contributed too much at all to it, you're not going to get much. But I know some people who have pretty much maxed it out most of their life, and when they do that, they get somewhere in the vicinity of about $1,800 per person just on Canada Pension Plan.
Mm-hmm.
But that is very, very rare, actually. Mm-hmm. How many people actually work and maximize their contribution to CPP all the time and through their entire 40, 50-year career? Very, very few.
What would the average be?
That I actually don't know. And it would... I don't know what the national average is, but it would be very, very different, even regionally, because you just as an example, you have people maximizing their contribution when the oil industry is just paying like crazy and it's just going gangbusters, and then you got a decade where there's next to nothing in the oil industry because you have whatever. So there's huge swings, and it's very inconsistent. Then you have people moving from one jurisdiction in Canada to another to find more work, and so it's very, very, very individualized. To make general assumptions and stuff, it's very, very dangerous in there. So it is very. I would say on average, you can actually go to online and actually find out exactly what your figures are right now, and it'll show. Actually, our parents, they actually very low.
Yes, they are.
Their numbers, I think, are $900 each or something like that.
Yeah, it is.
Or is it?
Because I know from what we've talked about, Dad made it exceptionally painfully obvious that he was going to pay the government as little as freaking possible.
Now, okay, do you know what his plan was? His plan was he sweat labored how many duplexes and a sixplex and a fourplex and he built things and just invested his sweat into there, and he kept them for 20, 25, 35 years.
Yeah.
You know, there was one there's actually two duplexes he spent probably 4 or 5 years building. Mm-hmm. He didn't
I helped him.
He didn't pay himself.
Yeah. No, and he hardly paid me when I helped him too. So I'm expecting that money to come back too, Dad.
Is there an ROI on that?
I'm hoping.
He actually built a duplex.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's in the 80s or something like that for $50,000.
Yeah. See, but that's
including the land.
Yeah, that's
where. No, wait, hold it. It could be. I can't remember.
That's where I was saying the person that does that. Dad was in that 1% that most people won't live under the conditions he puts himself to get him where he wants to go.
Yeah,
like they're
delayed gratification.
Yeah, growing up as a kid, you think like, what all the other kids are doing. I look back now, and we didn't do a lot when Dad did something for holidays or whatever. Yeah. They were I would consider them excessive. Dad went all out, but he was extremely diligent and meticulous with his money.
Very, very disciplined, structured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At 60, I can still learn from my dad.
He is very, very conservative with his money. And so he stockpiled it all.
Yep.
And then at some point in time, like I did some advising to him for real estate and stuff like this, and he took advantage of everything that came along to his advantage. There was something back in the 80s, within a couple of decades, but it was in the 80s where they were the government was, we got to stimulate the economy, okay, and so we got people to sell property and stuff like this, and so there was a something where it doesn't matter what the cost of the asset had, your book value. Let's say it was $50,000. You could get an appraisal on it, and then bump it up to that appraisal, tax-free, and then you can sell it without any taxes on it.
Was that what Donald Trump did?
Oh no, that's a different. That's different. There was a one-time event that occurred in Canadian. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Brian Mulroney was prime minister at the time. This is like way back in like whatever, and they were a little bit desperate. And they just said, hey, this is a one-time thing. So if you have an asset or whatever, and then you can bump it up to market value, and these are the rules for it. I looked at it and I said, dang, this is never going to happen again. Jump on it. And I know he probably saved, I'm guessing, $100,000 with the taxes just from that one move. Well, he just did that and everything was fine, and he took advantage of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think he sold anything at the time. Or whatever it was. He followed all the rules. Yeah. But he took it. But there was always these small little things that he just kept doing it. Very frugal guy. Yeah. But very frugal with taxes.
Yeah. But the key was that Dad made sure that he paid as little to the government as possible, but the cash that he did keep and save, he made that overperform what the government would have returned him.
Oh, totally.
And that is part of that 1% where you have to be so diligent and meticulous and make that work for you. Yeah. And it's not just, just not paying the government their money isn't necessarily the right thing to do. No. But
he paid taxes.
Yes,
every year.
Yep.
He paid, but not very much, just minimal, and that's why his CPP was so low.
Yeah,
and how he can survive with that low amount, that just goes to their mindset. Like they're in a certain mindset, and I'm sure there's. I have talked to many clients who are unbelievably squeaky. Cheap, cheap is maybe it's a negative word. Frugal is a good thing. I have clients who have not bags, cans of coins buried in their land and all over the. It's lots of fun. I got great clients, and great for them. And so the frugality is really is in some instances is great to watch in people, but realistically, he saved all of his life, and he did such I shouldn't say a tight job, but such an aggressive saving. My guess is he would have probably died at about, if he would have continued that, he probably would have died at 65. But then he, at some point in time, he had enough, and it wasn't a pressure, and so he started being snowbird and go down to Texas. That mindset change, which happened, I think it's at 55. That added decades,
added years to his life,
decades to his life. Because he was far too intense before that. And
not that he's not intense now.
No,
it's just
in a different way.
If you have decades of thinking in a certain way, try and unthink that sometimes.
I don't want to get off topic. But like being that intentional, part of that is. And over the last couple years of visiting at Mom and Dad's, I've been asking about history, growing up, and all that kind of stuff. And me and you are first generation Canadians.
Yes.
Dad came over from Holland when he was 10. And what he, for the first 10, 15 years, what he went through just after the war to stay alive, put food on the table, help support the family, our kids.
Oh, they have no idea.
Holy cow! Would they have fits?
Dad left home when he was 14. Went to work in BC in a sawmill.
In a lumber. Yep.
Like
he worked with his brother for the
You can't
first
get a 14-year-old to stop playing video games today.
No,
like I mean,
no. Never mind swing an axe and walk in the bush and.
Yeah.
But whatever, the thing that I think part of that growing up mindset of not having enough, and my kids won't have to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. We've by osmosis, I think we've got some of that.
Yeah.
We just go work hard. We don't have that knowing of what are we going to have to eat tomorrow. We've never had. I don't think we've ever had that. It's been close. It's been tight.
Yeah.
But I think our mentality too was raising our kids. Our kids are going to have what we wanted and couldn't have. Yeah. And so we bought it for them. Yeah. And they didn't appreciate it.
No,
they didn't.
I know.
And so that was my biggest frustration with the kids.
Yeah.
Growing up.
Yeah.
They got everything that I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they didn't use it.
Yeah.
And now
see, and that's part of that growing up mind frame. Like we're the transition from that desperate society that if you don't work, you die. Mm-hmm. That's a very simple way to put it. And this generation that has no idea what they see it on a video game. Well, you just push the button and you respawn, and then you carry on.
Yeah.
Well,
it's so instant.
It is. Sorry, I know we're way off topic, but it is been something that
when it comes to retirement, delayed gratification and sacrifice is absolutely key.
Yes.
Typically, if a really wise person would probably start thinking about retirement when they're 20, 25.
Yeah.
Not 45, 50.
For the people out there, learn. It's not a bad thing. Go talk to mom and dad. See what they had to do.
Or grandpa
and grandma. If you have that,
find an old timer.
And just you don't have to ask about what the government would. Just like, what did you do? How did you grow up? That changes something in you, which gives you that push. And there's cycles of life where you have to push through and knowing, you know what, my grandpa did that. That's what he did to get me here. And it's been a really touching thing for me for the last few years.
But at our age now, you have to live life on purpose.
Yeah.
I said to somebody the other day, they were complaining, and they were 45. They were complaining about aches and pains and all of this, and wanting to sit on the couch. I said, you know what? The older you get, the more you have to live on purpose.
Yeah.
You have to decide. You can't let your body dictate to what you need to do or what needs to get done. You got to go. Yeah. And you know what? That keeps you healthy. That I said, I'll never die of Alzheimer's.
No.
No.
I'm always doing something good.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. It's absolutely living intentionally is huge.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's flip back to our taking a little bit closer look at actual Canada Pension Plan, the Canada Pension Plan history of contributions, and actually see what happens. If you see the red and the blue lined chart, it starts in 1966 and it goes all the way out to 2020. I think it's 2024 in there. And if you take a look at it is insane. Now, the bottom, the red actually it starts at whatever, $79 a year in Canada Pension Plan contributions. And all I did was just put the inflation rate. I added the inflation rate into there that goes off into current. And so $79 in 1966 is somewhere in the vicinity of $450 or about $500 in Actually, it's slightly more than $500 today. So it's about 6 times the amount of money. Now, when you take a look at the contributions, the blue lines actually represent what is what we actually have to contribute to Canada Pension Plan. And this chart only shows the employee portion. If you're a self-employed individual or you own your own corporation and it's all yours, you have to pay both the employer and the employee portion. And so it's actually double this. So the blue line is double this. And you realize, first of all, that the amount that went into Canada Pension Plan, it actually grew significantly faster than inflation did. So it is, if it was just inflation, then it would be somewhere around where the red is. But obviously, it's basically 5 times the, almost, about 8 times the amount that over inflation. Now, there's a few reasons for that. In 1966, our parents contributed $79 a year to Canada Pension Plan. Today, if they were working for somebody, they were contributing $4,000, slightly more than $4,000. If they were self-employed, then it's $8,000, both the employer-employee portion of it. So a significant increase in it. There's a few reasons for that. First of all, in 1966, people died a lot quicker than they are today. Mm-hmm. Remember, but even when we were young, to think of somebody in their 70s,
that was unheard of.
Oh, that was super rare in their 80s and 90s, you know. Mm-hmm. But now the average life expectancy is 81, 82. Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, it's huge, you know. Mm-hmm. I think probably the biggest factor to that has to do with infant mortality has dropped significantly, because that would skew the whole data in life expectancy as well. So realistically, when they were making Canada Pension Plan defined benefits, they were using people. The average life expectancy in 1966, 67 in that area was 65 years of age, which means you contribute all your life, and then on average the person dies, and all of that contribution just disappears. It goes back into the kitty. It was supposed to work out pretty good, but there's several problems with the original plan. First of all, like I said, people live longer. Instead of 65 now, they're living to 80, 82 in that area. And on top of that, we have an aging population. People had way fewer, there was, in 1966, we're in the middle of the baby boomers, okay? These guys were having kids like crazy. They were having 4, 5, 6 plus kids. And what happened to the population is they stopped having kids at that huge rate. Now they only have, one or basically 2 or 3 of them. And so two or three kids. And that skews that defined benefit. When you extrapolate that out into the future, you have more and more people collecting your benefit and less people contributing. Yep. Okay, and that's really not their fault. I mean, nobody can foresee 30 years in the future what's going to happen. Yeah. Now, there's another factor to Canada Pension Plan, and that is immigration. It's one of the reasons why the government keeps bringing people in when we don't have kids. Our generation, how many kids you have?
3.
I had 3.
Oh, sorry, 2.
2. Yeah.
We're third one. I wanted 3, 4.
Okay, so
I'm the third one. I'm the third one.
So you had 2, I had 3, and you had 2. Oh, okay. So You guys didn't do your part
No,
as much as I did mine.
Yeah.
I had 3.
Yeah.
So-
My wife wanted me to get another woman, and I was not.
No.
No, not going to happen.
Not gonna happen. So when we only basically just plateau our population, it skews the defined benefits significantly, and because of that, because of the fewer and fewer workers, that's why they had to raise the rates from $79 a year to now thousands of dollars a year. And whenever somebody comes into power, whatever prime minister it is, he has to review the Canada Pension Plan and see are we contributing enough, and the like. And it's not like he can say, well, we have a surplus in our general fund, we'll just throw it into the Canada Pension Plan. It has to be run independently. I mean, I guess they could throw money into there, but of course they'd rather spend it somewhere else, I'm sure. But I mean, it's an independent thing, so he advises. And the only thing they tend to advise is, well, we just contribute more. Or not we. The people just has to contribute more.
But so with the mass immigration that we have now, will that change anything?
In theory, it should.
It should.
If
but
they
it
all,
will it?
if they are fully contributing workers, then yes. But if they are not, and this would be, let's go an extreme case. Let's say there's a whole bunch of welfare people. Okay. Well, they're a drain on society. They're not contributing.
Right. Yep.
It's not gonna make anything. So the quality of people coming into our country, that is the key to the survival of Canada Pension Plan. So that's and it could have effect on the rising rates as well. So this has it shows a very significant hike in the last even 8 or 9 years, 9 years or so. It's actually increased by 30% in the last 9 or 10 years, which is very significant. It went from about is it now $2,500 up to over $4,000 or $4,500. No, $4,000, a little bit over $4,000 in 10 years. So that's very significant. As an employer, I have 35 plus employees. You notice it. In 10 years, when we used to do source deductions, it was X amount of dollars. Now source deductions are significantly higher, and just as a proportion of it. So it's a real drag on the economy. But those are basically what has happened in Canada Pension Plan. Now let's talk about retirement. Specifically, not specifically us, but generally speaking, our retirement or the Canadians' retirement. First of all, 60% of Canadians, their retirement plan is a paid-for house. That is the number one factor. If your house is paid for, they say, well, okay, that's a pretty significant retirement plan, which is true. It is. Having a paid-for house, what that does is it stabilizes your cost of living, because if you don't have a mortgage anymore, basically all you do is heating and hydro and general upkeep and stuff like that. You're laughing, that's that should save you, well, depending on where you live in Canada, thousands of dollars a month. That is very significant. So instead of having to make, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year just to survive, now you can make half that and be able to survive. So it is a very significant impact in retirement question. The only thing is you can't eat your house. No. So you do. That's right. You do need something to supplement your income. Yeah. And there are, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 different categories to supplement your income, to bring in income at the time of retirement. Maybe the first one obviously is what we're talking about: Canada Pension Plan, old age security, and a guaranteed income supplement. And like before, I said the amount that you get very much determines how much you've been putting in, and the actual amount you're getting back is it can range. It'll probably peak somewhere around the $38,000-$40,000 a year. That's if you maximized it for your entire life, kind of a thing like that, and you put everything is maybe $38,000-$40,000 a year. But it can be as low as $12,000-$15,000 as well, or even less if you were like Dad, where you basically lived as a you had sweat equity for 35-40 years, and like, so there's a significant amount of variation in there. But everybody can go onto your personal account at Canada Revenue Agency and see what your benefit is going to be, your defined benefit will be. And they change that every year because there's a new formula because you contributed the previous year or something like that. Then there's two other categories, pretty significant. We'll go RRSPs, Registered Retirement Savings Plan, and that's probably the most popular because let's say you're making $100,000 a year, and instead of paying a huge tax rate of whatever 45-46% tax on that, if you buy an RRSP for say $25,000 in that year, then instead of paying taxes on $100,000, now you're only paying taxes on $75,000. So you get a solid 35-40% return on your investment. You put $25,000 into there, you automatically save that in taxes, and it's a great investment. And you throw it into mutual funds, and it grows tax-free. And then later on, once all your earnings goes down or is eliminated and you're retiring, then you pull money out, and then you pay taxes. But then it's at a much lower rate, and the theory is, and then you pay accordingly, and you live accordingly, I guess, in there. There's one interesting thing, and I remember this back in the 70s and 80s. In the 80s, early 80s, I guess. The general rule and they were talking about RSPs, everybody was talking about them, and all of a sudden, one guy, the general move, there was a lot of people who says, but taxes never go down. Because we talked about the negatives. Let's say, for instance, you're making $100,000 a year, and he says, well, you save some, but then you pay taxes on it later. Well, he said, well, the taxes are going to be so higher, even higher in the future. Yeah. The idea was that taxes always go up, and they never go down, and so the tax rates are going to be even higher when I retire. And from a logical perspective, you can see how for 20 years everybody sees all the taxes up. But realistically, if you take a look at Canada, the tax rates and taxation has actually it became saturated, what I call saturated in late 70s and early 80s, where the general populace basically said, wait a minute, we're being overtaxed, and there was a shouldn't say a tax revolt, because it's a tax pushback, and governments started promising, we're going to reduce your taxes, and that's where Canada started the conservative versus liberal pendulum swing. The Liberals raised taxes, and Liberals MBT raised taxes, and then everybody gets sick and tired of, it's taxes. And then conservatives say, we're going to reduce your taxes. Oh, all right, then we'll go with you. And it goes back and forth like this. And there were times where the tax rates actually went down. Like, for instance, corporate taxes used to be in the 40s, 45s in there. Now it's 28, 30, and that's globally now. It's sort of like the entire world used to have very high corporate taxes, and now they've pretty much settled somewhere around the 30% range. And so as a society, this is what's not just in Canada, but in the world, we have to compare what we're doing all around the world. If we have a 50% tax rate and the United States has a 30% tax rate, well, all the businesses
everything moves.
Everything, and that's what happened in the 70s, 80s,
Yeah,
and
went
90s.
to Mexico.
Yeah, they went to Mexico. They went to somewhere because we had just grossly.
Yeah.
I remember when I was driving. Even this was in the 90s. They were hiking taxes, and we went in Ontario to a place that made these chrome wheels for automobiles or whatever, custom ones, and they were making them. And I thought, oh, these are pretty cool. And he says, yeah, well, at the end of this month, this company is moving. I said, what do you mean moving? They're moving into the States somewhere. And I said, well, why? He says, the taxes are too high. And I think they were unionized also, and the union had too much defined benefit, and it was too costly, and they could do it for a fraction down the States, so they survived. And so in an environment, in a country where there's too high of a taxation, people leave. And that's normal. And as a country, we've somewhat learned that, but not entirely. There's some political parties think that taxation is still you can tax indefinitely, but you really can't. And realistically, as a general population, we have teetered on a tax pushback versus a tax revolt, and that we're right at the max. They're not going to push that much. That's why if you take a look at what's going on right now, the huge things that are like the carbon tax and the axe the tax and stuff like this, there was one like that too with the goods and service. You remember? GST used to be 7%, and everybody else. Incidentally, the GST actually, Mulrooney brought in the GST, which is conservative, and maybe that's why he was no longer prime minister. But realistically, it was an election issue that I think it was Stephen Harper who says, I'm going to bring it from 7% down to 5%, and that's what got him in. And so the entire society has this attitude, which is, I believe, very justifiable, that we are grossly overtaxed as a country. We're just paying gross, far too much in taxes, and we're right there now. So now Polyev is very popular, huge popular. He's more. It looks like if an election would be held right now, he'd have the highest majority than anyone in the history of Canada, more even than Brian Mulrooney, who had the highest record before. And it's primarily because everybody feels grossly overtaxed, and it's as an accountant who does taxes, we have people coming in all the time who says, your job is to make sure that I never pay a penny of taxes. Well, I'm sorry.
My job.
Go down the road.
Get down the road or something like that. I don't lie. I don't cheat. But
you're no good.
I do know firms that do lie and cheat, but we don't do it. We do non-taxable benefits, which is the legal way of doing it. And in my opinion, non-taxable benefits is the perfect answer to independent operators who don't want to pay taxes. Well, you've saved. I should have looked this up. You and your wife, running super single, you have a perfect setup for paying the least amount of taxes. You must have paid quite a bit before you came here.
We did, yep.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it just drops right down. And there's a lot of domino effects that happens, and it opens up a whole amount. Can you imagine? I can't understand how operators out there survive without non-taxable benefits. Like, could you imagine you would be probably somewhere around $18,000 a year in taxes. You ordinarily should be paying more every year. That would be devastating.
Yep.
You know?
What happens is you drive harder the next year because you got to pay the tax bill.
Yeah.
Then the next year you drive harder to pay that tax bill.
And it's a never-ending harder.
It's a gerbil on a wheel.
Yeah.
It never ends.
Now you throw a brand new truck in there.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's the only answer an accountant says. Well, if you buy a brand new truck, you depreciate it. Well, instead of sending it to Ottawa, you send it to some manufacturing plant or financing company.
Financing company.
Yeah.
That's the
no. That's the wrong answer to it.
Somebody called me the other day. They asked me what I thought about them. They're not owner operators, never have been. They want to get into buying their own truck now, but he wants to buy a new one. Mm-hmm. What I thought about that? I said, first of all, check your temperature. And I says, I started with a $20,000 truck.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, drive it for a year. You haven't lost anything.
Yeah.
But I said, now if you're going to invest $300,000.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
I don't care if you and your wife both drive.
Yeah.
But you can do what you want.
Yeah.
But I said, I would never think about it.
Yeah. How old was he?
52, 53.
53. Yeah. Yeah. You have to weigh the different risks of everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure.
For me and my wife driving together, we could buy a new truck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But do I want to work that hard?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It would take you 5 years to get out of the hole. Or
well, you were telling me about one of your clients who trades in his truck every couple of years.
Oh yeah, he's in top of 0.1%.
Yeah, but he's in that category that is micromanaging everything, and it is part of his business plan. Okay, if you start early enough, and flip them all the time. Maintain,
and he has the cash flow.
You have the cash flow,
and 305 days in a year he's on the road.
Yeah, so it is a way to do it. There is, But I'm still trying to.
He says, okay, every 2 years I'm going to get a new truck.
Yeah.
Okay, and I told him, you know what, just once, drive one more year.
Right.
With an older truck. Just make it 3 years rather than 2 years.
Yeah.
I said, you within 2 cycles, you'll be paying cash for the truck.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know. Some people just have. I'm a little bit like that too. They look through life in a paper towel tube.
Yep.
And no, this is my plan, and it's working, and I'm whatever. And,
Yeah. See, I don't have a problem if you've got a cash flow set up, and this is what you want to do. Go for it. That's how you want to run your business. It will work because if you've done the numbers, whatever, that's fine. Running an older truck, like you said, that extra year, okay, it makes it's huge. Like when we were growing up, my dad had a toolbox. It was from when he was 20 years old.
Yeah,
all those screwdrivers did the same thing as a Snap-on does, which costs $40. Okay, I said, Dad, you've got enough money. You could upgrade and make these look nice, and this one works.
Yeah.
Tell me what I can make the same money with this screwdriver
than with
a brand new Snap-on. And I'm.
Yeah, you're right.
How do you argue that?
Yeah, you can't.
You're right.
It's good.
And
great logic.
Over the years, that's where I'm at. You know what? I've got a truck that's really old. I make the same money running down the road as a guy who's got a 10, 15-year newer truck.
Yeah.
And paying $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
Like we have new clients coming in on a regular basis. We have some that are $5,000 to $5,400 in truck payments. Just this last week, I had 2 new clients come in. One, he bought a truck for $26,000. and he knew the guy who was driving it before, and he wasn't a Red Seal mechanic, but he didn't have his license, but he had a year and a half in the shop, so he knew the basics on a lot of stuff. And I thought, okay, that's a nice combination. Nice combination. That guy's gonna do okay. You compare that to the guy who runs like a rabbit for 8 years at $5,200 a month payment, or 54, whatever it was, and the guy who's got a $5,400 payment, he's got to be young and really energetic and a little bit lucky to
Very
do that.
lucky, especially running by himself.
I had the other client that I had was his grandfather gifted him his truck. He's a third generation independent operator, and his grandfather says, "You know what? I'm retiring. Here, have my truck." So he turned it over for him. I thought, dang, that guy's gonna do okay.
Yeah.
Now he knows mechanics and stuff like that. So he's now that's a high level of success. You're probably gonna have no problem. Actually, really doesn't matter what carrier he's on. If he.
But you got to do, again, we've mentioned this before, but you got to do some of your own work.
I was just going to go there.
Not as much as you.
I do. My truck hasn't seen a shop for over a year.
Yeah. And you replaced your two rads last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The radiators and the thermostat. And
And air to air.
But I did that myself.
Yeah.
But, okay, I did the transmission. That was in a shop. I did that in February. But other than that, like in a shop here where I always go, it hasn't been there since.
Right.
Since your engine job. Yeah. So
Not once.
Yeah. You can do it. Like you don't do your own maintenance.
I do very little my own. Yeah.
But you probably have a much higher maintenance account. Because not everybody can do what you do. You have your own shop at home.
And
too.
we have Google and we have YouTube.
Yes.
And I have my own shop.
Yeah.
That
is a huge
I have my own
factor.
tools.
Yeah.
And everything's there that I need.
Cat's me on.
That's huge.
Huge thing. Yeah. Okay, so past RSPs, the next one is tax-free savings account. And right now, for 2024, an individual, the maximum they can put into a tax-free savings account is $95,000, provided that they're old enough in there. But
$95,000 in a
each.
year?
Well, you can. If you had $95,000, you could put it together, put it into a tax-free savings account. All of the earnings that it would make is all tax-free. And then at any point in time in the future, you can just yank it out of tax-free, and there's no tax implications whatsoever. So if you want to make...
is that the earnings or the whole, even the principal?
Everything. Principal and interest and everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's... Because the biggest problem in Canada is overcoming taxes. Because if you're talking about a return on your investment... the biggest problem is taxes. If you're going to make, if you have a side hustle, you're going to do this, that, or whatever. When it comes to retirement, the biggest obstacle is taxes. Now, there is, I went through CPP, OAS, GIS, RSPs, TFSAs, and I'm a big believer in TFSAs rather than RSPs, depending on what age you are and what wealth you have. Because my biggest problem is I have a lot of real estate, and when I retire, I have to sell it all, and then I have big taxes. And I figured I didn't want RSPs to be cashed in at the same time when I'm doing it. Then my taxes are really through the roof. So I decided to do which is the sixth option for retirement, and that is personal investments. And that's a lot what we were talking about. Dad did, where basically he did sweat labor. There is an individual that drove for over 40 years. And his retirement plan, I don't know if he thought about it as a retirement plan, but he did it anyway. When he first started driving truck, he got a little bit of money together and he bought a duplex. Big mortgage. And his wife took care of the maintenance issues and the collecting and stuff like that. And then they drive for a few more years and then bought another duplex. Few more years, bought another duplex. And they ended up, I don't know, somewhere in the teens with buildings. Some were houses, not duplexes and stuff like this. But they pretty much lived for about 40 to 45 years. And they were always paying some mortgage somewhere because they always were expanding. Then they hit what would be very close to retirement and the vast majority of rental property money, the wealth that you create is in your capital gains. It's not in the cash flow of your renters. Renters basically pay for small stuff, maybe your mortgage, and you have a little bit of income at best, but generally speaking on real estate, it's a place to park money for X amount of dollars, and then 10, 20, 30, not 10, more like 15, 25, 35 years later, that's when you sell it, sell a $100,000 piece of property for 250, 400, 500,000, whatever it is. That model has worked really well in the past. And one of the biggest advantages of that model is that you're delaying your taxes. The number one thing for retirement, like we were saying, is what can you do to avoid taxes for 20, 30 plus years? Real estate, owning real estate so that it grows tax-free until the day that you sell it. That is one way to what they call defer taxes off into the future. And it's a great model. Now, there is a problem with it. And we're the only country in the civilized world that has laws on this. And this came in, I believe, I should have wrote it down. I think it was 2013, 15, somewhere in there. I think it was 15 or 16. And if you have passive income, it now qualifies for tax at 50%. And that includes capital gains. And so whatever advantage that this guy who drove for 45 years had, where his total purchases over 40 years or probably 30 years of purchases got him, he probably invested maybe $500,000 or $600,000, $700,000. And in the end, he sold all of his property to retire, or most all of his property to retire, and the value would probably be 1.8 to 2.5. I don't know the exact numbers on it, but he would be very consistent. So he has $1 million, $1.5 million. He pays a little bit of taxes, and that's it. But that option is not actually available for truck drivers anymore. Well, truck drivers, for anybody anymore, because of this active versus passive law. Okay, because if you own a duplex, you go out and you buy a duplex. Let's say you get a smoking hot deal on a duplex. You buy it and you hold on to it. Let's say you hold on to it for 20 years. The passive versus active law says, even if you don't cash flow anything, you pay your taxes on the building, and your rent pays for the mortgage and interest and everything, and you're slowly paying down on it, and you actually don't cash flow positive. You don't have any income on it. When you sell it, let's say you bought it for $100,000, and then you sell it in the future for $250,000. That $150,000 of capital gains, you have to pay taxes of 50% on it because it's passive income. There is a lot of controversy about individuals owning rental units like this. What Dad did could not be done under these rules. He sold all of his stuff before these rules came in, but you can't do that anymore. And the reason is that the reasons that you, how do you say, how he does, you don't have to pay that 50%. There's a few ways to get around it. The first is you have to have a business that has 5 or more employees, full-time employed individuals. So if you are a truck driver driving down the road and your wife either stays at home or has a part-time job or something like that, and you say, hey, let's buy a rental unit. We get a smoking hot deal here. We'll buy it, and we start collecting rent, paying down the mortgage, and that's a plan. Okay, you qualify for that is classified as passive income, and you're going to get taxed at 50%, and that is grossly too high. It has to go back to the prior numbers, which is you only pay capital gains on, or you only pay taxes on the capital gains, which is 50%, and it works out to somewhere in the vicinity of about 15%, 18%, just doing some head math on that. So what Dad would have had to pay, which would be 15-18% on that, now he would be paying 50%. And it is a terrible, terrible law that hopefully the Conservatives or somebody, doesn't matter who, they can axe or rescind some of those laws. The controversy comes in because number one, not very many people know about it. And number two, Canada Revenue Agency, especially for the first number of years, never enforced it. Okay, and the primary reason is the majority of passive income is on real estate, and there is no cash flow on real estate until you sell it. And real estate, if you hold it for 20 years, well, you only pay 50% on the 1 or 2 or 3 years that they can only start charging it as of whatever the date start was. If you've held it onto it for 30 years and 2 months after they passed the law, there's very little tax on there because it's only 2 months out of 30 years. So they fractionize the whole thing. Okay. So it's all proportioned in there. So it wasn't a hugely implemented thing. It's not a huge thing. But the longer that law is in there, the more it applies.
Yeah.
And what the thinking of the people who instituted it, there's quite a few ideas why they did it. I don't know all the politics. I can only guess. But somewhere along the lines of they don't want small-time investors getting into any market. They just want big-time businesses doing it, which is that's a sort of a Canadian mindset or so. So historically, when people did something like this, if you're a truck driver and you're thinking duplex or rental property or something like that, this is a major, major obstacle for you. Now, there are many people out there who say, hey, I bought one 5 years ago. Okay, then you qualified. Now, there is no, so Canada Revenue Agency is not going to come after you because you haven't really cash flowed any income, generally speaking, on there. And, but wait until you sell it. And not everybody who sells it may be audited. But there are ways in which CRA is looking for it and say, okay, wait a minute, this guy does it. Can you imagine people in Vancouver or Toronto or something like that? They bought a rental unit for $1 million, in 2015 or something like that. And today those things are, or even 2050, say 2000, or 2000, say 2010. And now that $1 million property is now worth $4 or $5 million or $8 million. Think of the taxes that those guys are paying. Well, CRA is just sitting there and waiting for the person to actually sell the thing. Now, that is a huge hit for a real estate person, you know. Or and if it's oftentimes it's just one small little thing. Oh, we took a risk on this one property, and that's their one plan on retirement. That I can make, you know. And then all of a sudden they get absolutely cut underneath.
Pulled the rug right out.
Yeah. So what used to be a great idea, and that ingenuity and entrepreneurial spirit is just cut right out of people, and that it's a horrible law. It's not nearly as what it is now. There is a misinformation out there, and the biggest misinformation is if you have a property like that and you just have a management company manage it. Who has a whole bunch of employees, well, then that gets you out from underneath the rule. It's an illusion, and there's people who sell that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm a management company, and I'll save you this, but that's disinformation, because that doesn't stop that doesn't stop CRA from doing it. It doesn't matter who's managing it. You personally have to have employees that there's more than 5, and there's people who have said, for instance, there's me and my wife and my 3 kids and I'll put them down there as income or something like that. Nope, that doesn't work either. They have a pretty high bar when it comes to what actually those employees are paid and what the market is and stuff like this. So. There's a lot of people who think they're getting around it, but they're really not. I know an individual, you do too, who has a corporation, a couple plots of land, a couple of duplexes, and they would ordinarily qualify for passive income, but the individual also has a half a dozen employees. And because they're associated, even if they're not in the exact same corporation, maybe it's in a parent corporation or some sister corporation or something, that qualifies. Like for instance, I own a duplex. Yeah. And if I didn't have, 30 or 35 employees, under a subsidiary, I would qualify for passive immediately. But that allows me to do it. Yeah. But when you're an independent operator, you got one business yourself, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to use my corporation to build up a whole bunch of reserve, and I'm going to start doing investments in real estate. Can't do it. So it's a very much of it's a huge hurdle, and it's hidden in the investment world in Canada.
I just got my old memory back here. we were talking about the one driver who trades in his truck every couple of years.
Yes.
I don't have a problem with that business plan. Everybody can choose their risks. For me, my issue with that is every 2 years you're going into a new truck and you do not know the history, even if it's brand new. Yeah. That I've seen many drivers crippled and destroyed by a brand new truck. And everything should have been under warranty. Yeah. But between the downtime and trying to figure out a computer or this or that,
we've talked about this before.
The door. And that's where that one extra year. Yeah. Okay, it's not.
The cash flow is $100,000 for him.
Yeah. All you've done is you've used your tool one more year. You know where it's at. You know that you can extrapolate another year of maintenance. We should be able to do this and do this. Yeah, I can manage that. Yeah. That part of the risk management.
Maybe you should talk to the guy because his truck payment is over $8,000 a month.
What?
Yeah.
One truck.
Yeah.
Ow, 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 ow.
Yeah. Ow. He drives. It's a team situation, like him and his spouse or wife or whatever it is.
How do you make sense of that?
Well, they drive 305 to 320 days in a
Well, you're
year.
not going to drive long like that. That doesn't work.
Well, they don't have a life.
Your body, but your body won't last.
I don't know. I know farmers who do worse.
Okay. Yes. You know.
Yeah, but you do that for 20 years, you know? But he's been doing it for 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
And don't know.
See, and as far as that goes, another area of the risk management is you may have that business, the business plan set up on a structure that this company, what I'm working for, is going to be there forever until my business. Their business plan has to outlast my business plan.
Yeah.
What in the world lasts that long?
It's a very reputable company that he's working for.
Okay,
that's not a big factor.
Okay,
but
good.
Whether that lane and loop
that
he's on continues on, that's within that company. It's a good question too.
And that kind of ties in. We were talking about what's the name of it? Retirement.
Yeah.
Okay, and I remember growing up, Dad was no. I'm doing all myself. I'm not counting on the government, this and that. And this was way back when Ford and GM were going through their crunch. And they were both, like, Ford, if you got a job at Ford in Michigan, you were set for life.
Yeah.
Because their unions guaranteed you a
Your
retirement
pension.
of this and this and this. Like, how could... They've been building cars since the 20s, 10s, whatever. Like Ford's been around forever. How can that go wrong, right? Well, they just about closed the doors. What happened to all those retirements? Well, they're gone.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm a kid younger than I am now. I'm looking. Dad's telling me don't trust the government. Well, okay, maybe I can do. Oh no, that doesn't work either.
Okay, there's another very good point right along this line too, and not very many people do. You know who the biggest employer in Canada is?
Probably government.
Federal government.
Yeah.
Okay? And they have their own pensions. Okay,
right.
They have their own pensions. The province with their employees have their own pensions.
Yeah.
Cities have pensions. They're all defined benefits. And municipalities oftentimes have pensions for road workers or cleaners, or I mean, all of them. RCMP, everybody. They're all like that. Now, if you take a look at our $1.6 trillion in national debt, our national debt interest on that national debt went from $34 billion a year to just last year went to $54 billion. In 1 year, it leaped, almost doubled. Okay, and that's because of short-term stuff. It used to be back in the 60s, 70s, when Canada went into debt. They had these Canada savings bonds that you hold them for 30 years or something. You don't do that anymore. They just do like 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or something like that. And the vast majority, or a significant portion of the debt is shorter. Much shorter, and that's because people don't know. Why would I have a 3-year interest or a 3% return on my investment for 30 years? Who knows what's going to be? No, I'll do that for a few years. Yeah. I'm not going to carry it on like that. Yeah. So they want a much higher one. So in order to save on interest, the government moved from long-term to short-term. Well, that just makes things vulnerable like crazy when you have, 1 year interest rates go up like we've had now. Yeah. So now extrapolate this into the future. They keep printing money, and they say, oh, well, the interest rate is high, but you know what? It's controllable, and it'll be coming down again. Bullshit. I don't believe that at all. Sorry. Edit. I don't actually believe that.
Right. Yeah.
And so they moved from 5% to 6% to 7 to 8 to 9 or whatever. At some point in time, the interest on $1.6 trillion is going to be, 80 billion or 800 billion. No, sorry, 80 billion. 90 billion, 100, and it could take over the entire budget. It's bigger more and more because right now at 54 billion, that the transfers that the federal government give to the provinces for health care is only 48 billion. So we're paying more on interest than we are the Canadian healthcare system. And just wait what happens. At some point in time, we can't borrow money anymore.
Yeah.
And the only other alternative is to print like crazy, and then we've got inflation, and then we got higher, and it's a downward Zimbabwe thing. So they can't do that. So they're going to talk cutting back on the government. And what's going to happen to the pension plans of the federal, the provincial?
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be squeezed.
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to do that? Those defined benefit pension plans from all of the governments all across Canada, they're going to get squeezed. I don't think that they're going to be able to shortchange the people who are in retirement.
Right.
Legally, I don't think they're going to be able to do it. But what are the services that they're going to drop in order to afford those defined benefits? How much street work are we going to have? Potholes. How much are we going to...
We don't have any now, really.
The DOT inspectors, the house inspectors.
I'll tell you my favorite, and this will show up just because we live in Steinbach. We've got a lot of potholes, but we have a skating rink. Because don't worry about the potholes. We have a skating rink.
Oh, that's right. We're building this.
We're building a skating rink.
$50 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about that. That just roars me.
Every time I drive around, we've got a skating rink.
Actually, if it's filled with water and it freezes overnight, you got another skating rink.
And then we got kids playing in the middle of
it. Okay. Anyway, so when it comes to taxes and retirement, taxes are the biggest problem that we want to overcome. And there's obvious potential solutions for it anyway. Return on investment is the next major factor. Canada Pension Plan has an ROI on it. We've all been contributing to Canada Pension Plan. Well, what do you actually get out of it? It is a defined benefit, so you're going to get an exact dollar figure back again. Well, what return on the investment of all of the money that you gave? What do you get back? If you are an employee for someone else, the ROI on that money that you've contributed, it averages, since inception, 5.77% ROI on your benefit. If you have been self-employed or have a corporation and you pay both the employer and the employee, your ROI is actually 2.88%. Okay? So yes, you're contributing. Yes, you're going to get a defined benefit from it. But it's not a heck of a, you can get any mutual fund out there that's going to be doing better than that. Yeah. Okay? But it's if you're an employee for someone else and all you're doing, it's not bad. It's slightly better than interest rate or than inflation, should I say? 5.77 is a few points above inflation, so it's not too bad. But if you're an entrepreneur, you're getting 2.88. It's a terrible investment. And there are some rules that just came out in 2023, and some of the new rules that apply to CPP that make it, the closer you are to retirement, it's actually, you got negative return on your investment. Whatever you're giving, you're not getting any return at all on it. And they just started massaging the numbers so that the people who are retiring are getting less and less, and you have to pay a little bit more and don't get any benefit for it. So they're at that point where it's not that you aren't going to get it, it's just that you should not be hanging your hat too heavy on Canada Pension Plan. Because it's there. You have to think much much higher return on your investment, tax-free, than 5.77% even. For sure, more than 2.8. So what is the return on the investment that you actually need? If you get the average, a good paying average mutual fund, and there's tens of thousands of, I don't know, tens of thousands, but sure, thousands and thousands of mutual funds out there in RSPs or TFSAs, okay? And you should be able to average about 8.5% return on a mutual fund. There are some that get in the teens and stuff like this, but they're not consistent over 20, 30 years. Okay, so if you just say, you know what, let's use 8.5% for that. How much do you need in an investment vehicle that will give you cash flows so that you can eat and support yourself at retirement? And I mean, if you talk to a personal financial manager, they're licensed in Canada or whatever. They got these formulas. They plotted in there. You need so much in retirement in order for you to sustain this lifestyle and stuff like this. Okay, all well and good. The only thing is they sell mutual funds, and they're just trying to sell you, TFSAs and RSPs, which might be a very good plan for you. I'm not saying that. But what I'm trying to say is, what kind of return on your investment do you need? Like Dad, for instance, his ROI was probably somewhere in the high teens to 20% over 30 years. Probably even more than that if I run some numbers on there. And so, I mean, he didn't make a whole lot of money, but he gained huge wealth based on his ROI. He built something of high value for $50,000, and he sold it for whatever, something like almost $500,000. So 10 times in 30 years or something like that, which is very significant. Not very. I should know what the annual, but it would be 20% return on your investment. It's very, very significant. And so if somebody's, the closer to retirement you are, the higher your ROI you need on your money. And so that's a huge factor. If you're 40 years of age thinking about retirement, well, you're okay with 8.5%, and that's okay. But if you are like we are here at 60 years of age, what kind of ROI you need? You're looking to do a much better ROI. But as soon as you get a high ROI, generally speaking, under most circumstances, it's a higher risk value. Now you're talking rolling the dice kind of a thing like this. The reason why Dad could do it was he had 30 years, 30, 40 plus years to do it. And if somebody's got only 15 years, they got to be a little bit more thoughtful. And now he couldn't even do it now anyway because of passive income. Right. His taxes would have been basically almost 10 times what he ended up paying. It's very.
He also had a skill that he invested into, like he was
licensed gas fitter,
plumbing, gas fitting, electrical. He could do everything. He didn't have to hire out, which meant he worked 12, 14, 16-hour days and paid himself as if he worked 8 hours a day and low income. That's where that 1% of that personality, he took advantage of that.
It's pretty much a financial unicorn in there. Though there's other people too. I know some guys, they've walked into my office. I know what their net worth is. They look rugged and here, do you want a few dollars? Maybe get a new shirt, But I admire them because I know how much they're worth. Like our uncle was like that. Uncle Abe. Like, I mean, he walked around. He was like, no problem financially. But I mean, he had holes in his T-shirt and stuff like this. And And he hardly ever got robbed. He hardly ever got robbed. I don't think he ever got robbed. No. Because nobody thought he had any money.
Yeah,
That's a great feature there. Okay, let's move back here. Let's say if you want to retire, let's choose a number. Let's say you have $1 million in a mutual fund, and you're getting 8.5% return on that. How much can you take out of there and live indefinitely? And the general rule is 5%. So you can take out $50,000 a year. It makes $80,000, and the $30,000 stays in there, and it just gets rolled over and rolled over. And you never, as long as you take the percentage out of 5%, that number maybe go up and down a little bit, but you are able to live indefinitely with that. That is not a defined benefit. That is a percentage benefit. For the life of me, I can't think of the name of that system where your benefit goes up and down. But your value remains the same. You don't have to worry about contributing to your retirement because you've got it and you've confined yourself to living off of that 5%. Say now, so the average person would think, "Oh my goodness, I need $1 million of cash in a mutual fund, getting $85,000 a year in order to sustain my living to retire." And that's after pretty much you have your house paid for. When you look at it, it is, how do I say this? It's overwhelming. You say, well, I'll never be able to do that. It's outrageous. And if the people who are listening to this are like we are, it's 60, 61, 62 or whatever, yeah, it is overwhelming. How do you get $1 million by the time we're 70? That's like 10 years. You have to get a smoking hot deal on something and get a smoking hot sale on it, and you have to repeat that or something somewhere along that line. So it looks like a little high risk or something like that. But that's if you want to do absolutely nothing and you just want to sit on a rocking chair in your paid for house on there. So you have to have a retirement plan that incorporates multiple different things. A little bit of CPP, OAS, GIS. Maybe have a little bit of RSPs. Maybe you for sure have your house paid for. Or if your house is paid for, maybe you say, okay, now I'm going to hang up my keys for whatever reason, and I'll downsize the house. Now you have whatever, $200,000-$300,000 spare cash for that. That's another plan to do that. And then you work on the side and you say, okay, once a week I'll take a 2-day trip and drive or something like that. You have to have some sort of plan that incorporates various things on there. And like I have clients who are 75, 78, 84, somewhere like that. I was talking to an owner of a high up manager at a firm, and he has an owner operator that just bought a brand new truck. He was $270,000 or something like that, and the guy was 85 years old or something like that. Yeah, and he tried, and this guy tried to talk him out of buying this brand new truck. Because you're 85 years old. This is like you're going to be in your 90s. Oh, I'm okay. I'm okay. And that some people don't think about retirement, and they just say, I'm going to drive until I die, and that happens. There's in there, but more often than not, people don't die. They just become disabled. They're not able to actually work what they used to work. The amount of commitment that an 85-year-old guy would have to have for a $270,000 truck. I mean, you have a fire under your butt every morning, like.
Yeah, maybe he paid for it cash.
No, he didn't.
Oh, okay.
The guy knew he was financed the whole thing.
Well,
why they even allow that?
Yeah, the other option is
It's a
just
sale.
get
They get a
really
commission.
good life insurance.
Yeah,
covers
at 85, you know what your policy?
I know.
You're like $1,800, $2,500 a month.
Just doubled your truck payment.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Now maybe they put a life insurance policy associated with it.
Yeah.
I don't know, because sometimes you can get them, like these maintenance accounts and stuff like this in your life insurance. But those are unbelievably expensive too.
Yeah.
But they sometimes are attached only to the truck. The truck is paid for when you die.
I can see that working if he really doesn't care. If I get sick, I just park it. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
Take my what? Truck?
Yeah, they
Sure.
got. If he doesn't have anything, he's got nothing to lose.
Right?
Yeah.
Then I'll work till I can't, and then they can have the truck back.
Yeah.
Then I've at least driven in a new truck. Don't do that.
No,
Yeah.
it is retirement.
Anyways.
Okay, so now let's go to the next and almost the final topic on Canada Pension Plan, and that is, when do you start collecting CPP? 60, 65, 70 years of age. The best illustration that I have for making this choice, so that people understand what it is, because they say, well, if I do it at 60, I get this dollar figure, and then I do it at 65, I get that, and then they try and decide this, that, and the other. Realistically, the dollar figures are almost identical. I'll give you an example. Would you rather have $1 a day for 100 days? Would you rather have $10 every 10 days for 100 days? Or would you rather have, on the 100th day, $100?
Mm-hmm.
That's the real question. So realistically, it's not about how much money you make and how much money you don't make. The assumption on that example is that you're going to die at 82 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Everything that has to do with Canada Pension Plan, all of the numbers, the difference between 60, 65, and 70, has to do with the average death age of, it's either 81 or 82, somewhere in that. And so when you're deciding anything about Canada Pension Plan, that's the first question. Are you going to die before or after 82? 81, 82. If you take a look and you say, you know what, all of my family, none of them lived past 74. They all got cancer, or they all have Parkinson's, or they all have this and that, high production. Mm-hmm. You know what? It's better for you maybe to throw into the 60, Mm-hmm. But if you take a look and you figure out, well, hey, you know what? I got most of my family is 85, 90, 92, 95, so, I just seen Chuck Norris, who is 88, 88, 90, something like that, 88, something like that. His mom is still alive.
Are you serious?
102 years old.
Whoa.
Oh. It's like okay. That's pretty much.
There's some good stock there.
You got some good stock, yeah. So, I guess the death angel came by and she kicked her butt.
Yeah.
But anyway, so nobody knows when they're going to die.
Yeah.
But also nobody knows when they're going to be disabled, too.
Mm-hmm.
You may not die, but you're actually disabled.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, when you can't work anymore, you have to make the assumption that you better start collecting CPP now. Unless you have unless you have all of your retirement set aside already. Let's say you have, $1 million or $2 million or whatever, and it's all invested and everything is fine. And then it's a straight 81, 82 number. It's just kind of, okay, because there is no urgency then. Mm-hmm. then it's just a straight math game in there. But if you don't have 100% of your retirement contributed to, and then you do get disabled, you should grab CPP immediately, because you don't you need supplement. Now, when it comes to collecting your CPP, 60, 65, 70 years of age, you have to view what you're doing with your CPP two different ways. There's two things to do with your CPP. One is you consume it. Sometimes you have to consume it because you're disabled or something like that. And the other one is to invest it. If, like our dad, you had enough and you didn't need CPP at all, he should have started collecting at 60, and which I think he did. I think he did at 60. But then what he do, when you take that money and you throw it into a mutual fund, like an RSP or something like that, because it becomes taxable, and then you throw it into RSP and it's not taxed, so you're just deferring it off into the future. If you take the contributions that you get from CPP at 60, 65, and 70, how much money do you have at 81, 82 if you don't consume it at all and you just put it into an investment? That number is, if you got a mutual fund that you get 8% return on your investment at 82 years of age, if you start collecting at 60, it's $750,000. Now that's considerable cash already. If you started collecting CPP at 65 at 8%, it's $580,000 at 82. And if you start collecting at 70 at 8% return on investment, it's $460,000. Now, the difference between 460, 580, and 750 is almost entirely, obviously, you look at it and you say, well, then you start collecting at 60. But the miracle is not CPP. The miracle in these numbers is compound interest. That's the real issue. You're not dealing with Canada Pension Plan anymore. Now you're saying, okay, I make a commitment to throw Canada Pension Plan into an investment vehicle, and that's what you get out at the end. And so if that's your plan, then you say, okay, I'm going to start at 60, throw it all into an RSP, which isn't a bad plan at all, and then you're getting your 8%. That is one way to manage your retirement. But that basically means you're looking to retire. Well, if you actually retire at 82, then you have that cash available. But if you actually say retire at 70 or 75, if that's what your goal is, you'd have something much less than that. But it is still very significant, something that you can further draw on there. But you have to realize that return on investment is not linear. In other words, this number, it's at 8%. It was you get, let's say you get $1,000 on your first day when you're 60 years of age, and you get $1,000 a month all the way till you're 82. Well, the first month or the first year you do your $12,000 and you get 8% on there. And then next year you get compound 8% on top of that. The third year, the fourth year. When you got your investment in mutual funds, it's not linear. You don't get 8% every single year. One year you get 2%, and the next year you get 18%, and the next year you get 4%. It's up and down all over the place. And so these are just guesses. And so nothing is absolute on it. But it is some understanding and saying, okay, this is what do we approximately have in there. And there were people that I know one guy, for instance, who did mutual funds, and it was grossly overexposed for some odd reason in oil because he was in that industry and he was doing phenomenal for years. And just before his retirement, the oil sands and they started yanking away all of the Alberta stuff or whatever. His stocks took a plummet, and it was half of what he had. So he had a retirement plan, but it was overexposed, and that can happen. No, I mean, that's an extreme example,
Right?
But I mean,
It does happen.
yeah, it does happen. For sure. And so you have to understand that nothing is linear when you're.
If you put it in a TFSA, does it have interest like that too?
Yeah, you can do a mutual fund in TFSA.
Oh, okay.
You can do. You can buy CDs and get 5% interest on it if you want. It's not a good investment, but you can do anything you want. TFSAs and RSPs you can invest in pretty much the exact same stuff into it, and so you don't have to know a lot about investing in order to have a good RSP and a TFSA. You just have somebody who understands the general. In Canada, you have to be a certified financial planner in order to manage funds like that,
Yep.
and they all parrot the same thing, along that lines. And so 8.5% is very reasonable. If you everybody knows that I'm a fan of Dave Ramsey. He talks about 10% in the United States. That's really stretching it. He sometimes even says 12%. Okay, that's really stretching it. Now you can get it like that, but it's much more rare. I'd much rather be realistic and say 8.5%. There's some financial managers who say, "Oh man, it sure would be nice to get 8.5%," but it is realistic. Now, year over year, you can't. Like I have TFSAs, and they've actually gone up quite high. But my gut says this, 40,000 Dow. We'll see it down to the in the upper 20s again. It's all grossly overvalued because politics is way too much involved in the stock market right now. Not directly, they just because of a lot of their policies and stuff. There's too much tinder and explosions happening around all over the place. This is now we're actually on conclusion because we're right here on the conclusion. Rule number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 1, there is no right answer. Always, everything is a guess. Whether you take it at 60, 65, or 70, or there is no perfect answer. Everybody is looking for the exact perfect answer, and it's all probabilities and rolling of the dice. Like if Dad knew, he's 82 now. If Dad knew what he knew when he started, he probably would have waited to 65 or maybe even 70. Well, depends. No, he didn't. He consumed it. He consumed it, and he let his own investments grow rather than others. So it's a little bit different. But there are people who are in their 80s thinking, I didn't even think I could make it this far. And it's a little bit surprising. Our medical system has really kept people alive for a long time. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So there is no perfect answer. And I can't give anyone, and it's all probabilities. A personal financial manager better understand that there is no perfect answer either, because we're all just guessing when we're going to die. We could have all of our families like Chuck Norris. Everybody's in their 90s or 100s or whatever. And we could still get hit by a bus.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like, right. Yeah. Oh, rule number 2: take old age security at 65. Because the extra little bump you get at 70 doesn't make sense. Like it's so minimal, just get it at 65. And if you don't need it, throw it into an RSP or something, because it is taxable. And then rule number 3 is consider disability and inability in your plan. A lot of people take a look at, hey, got lots of energy, whatever, and this is going to go until all of a sudden I die. Yeah, a certain percentage that does happen.
Yeah.
But realistically, a much higher percentage actually say, I broke my leg, or my back hurts, or this injury, that injury, whatever it is, I just can't do it anymore.
Yep.
And they can't, and they're still alive. And so that you may have to change some plans based on this. And rule number 4, and that is the reason why I even have an accounting firm, and that is use non-taxable benefits. If you're an independent operator and you are wanting the best return on your investment, using non-taxable benefits is by far the best investment out there. It's not really, you don't get money out of it, or you don't put money into it, but you get to keep taxes. And taxes are the biggest thing when it comes to retirement. You have to avoid it at all possible. Non-taxable benefits save a truck driver $1,000 a month. And it is still a struggle for me and our firm to sometimes convince drivers that this actually works. Like, yes, we've saved $71 million in taxes, but the industry is so diverse all across Canada, and the vast majority of independent operators have their taxes done by a basement bookkeeper, by a strip mall guy, by a CPA firm that does. The CPA himself doesn't actually do the paperwork. He hires somebody off the street to do your paperwork on the side. He does. Some of them obviously don't even do the entries themselves, kind of a thing. It's sort of a side gig for them, because the independent operator industry is low-paying freight. And we have to understand that. And realistically, it's not the accountant that saves the money. It's not the accountant. It's the system that the accountant uses. That and that's the hardest thing, because most people, when they think about their, my accountant, he's a brilliant guy, he saved me this. And
he's a friend.
He's a friend. And he got me out of this trouble with CRA and this and that. And but if they're using the wrong system, it really doesn't make any difference. Yeah. You're still paying $12,000 a year more in taxes than what you should. And if you can take just that $12,000 a year and throw it, you can do it in TFSAs, though that's only $8,000, $7,000 a year, 7 or 8. I can't even remember right now. And if you put $12,000 a year, which otherwise you would have sent to Ottawa, into a RSPs, into mutual funds or whatever, that gets huge returns after a while. That you're saving huge bucks, and over years it's just immense. And if your accountant doesn't use non-taxable benefits, and the best way to find out whether they actually do, because the vast majority of people have no idea what their accountant does, if your accountant asks you, how many days were you on the road last year? Or gets you to submit your logs so that they'll count it, or you have to count it and you submit it to them. You are using the TL2 simplified method and not non-taxable benefits. There is a law, and it's been proven through court, you cannot use the TL2 simplified method and non-taxable benefits at the same time. None of our clients who are independent operators use the TL2 simplified method. We can't. It's illegal. They only use non-taxable benefits. And the accounting for it is different. The presentation to CRA is different. And if you realize that your accountant or your tax preparer does not use non-taxable benefits, you should contact our firm just to, first of all, understand what it is, because it's not very difficult to understand. And then, if you still want to use that accountant, then ask/require them to use our system, because we now have software that does it for them. And we've spent 6 or 7 years, maybe 8 years, depending on when we start, to develop the software so that other accounting firms can use it. those, if they use that system, then you can be guaranteed to, and you will see as you do on a monthly basis what you get free of taxes and what you don't. I mean, the domino effects of tax savings is amazing, because our entire tax system, whether it's child tax benefit, a whole bunch of different things legislated that the poor people get a whole bunch of benefits, and the people who make a lot of money pay a lot of taxes. That's the general rule. So all you're doing is moving yourself from a category of paying lots of taxes to presenting it in such a way that you're not actually making much money. It's almost half your income is cut down. And when that occurs, now you are in the category of, I shouldn't say poverty, but very close to poverty. As you present it to Canada Revenue Agency. Your child tax benefit goes up, and there's a whole bunch of domino effects that
you even get GST back.
You get GST. Well, you mean GST refund, like on the big, not your business GST. No. Your other one. Yeah, and so it's a huge benefit. Like there's a whole bunch of anyway.
What about for a company driver?
They cannot use non-taxable benefits unless their employer has the agreement with them.
Okay.
And that's the difficult part, because it's very expensive for an employer to universally apply to all of their employees. That would mean that, and this has happened historically, it's one of the reasons why Canada abandoned non-taxable benefits, is guys would jump in a truck and take off, go on, unload, and then disappear for 5 days, at Las Vegas or something like that. Don't talk to the dispatcher. You can't get a hold of them or something. Mm-hmm. And after their bender is over or whatever the heck they call and they say, okay, I'm ready to take a load back home again, And that was, unfortunately, that happens. And then they get in the truck, pick up the load, come back home. Legally, the company still has to pay non-taxable benefits for those 5 days he disappeared. The courts are pretty straightforward today. So you can imagine the abuse that people can go through. It's pretty bad. Yeah. So to understand non-taxable benefits, if you do it for 2, 3, 4 months, it actually makes perfect sense. You say, oh my goodness. You can actually see, okay, you got a salary, and you pay the source deductions on that salary, so that's tax. Okay, but this is tax free, and then this other stuff is all taxed again. So, but you realize how big your non-taxable benefit is every month. Get a check. Ooh, what the heck? And it's not check from the government. People sometimes, there was one client that came in. He says, I thought the government paid for this non-taxable benefit.
Oh my.
And they said, well, if the government's not paying for it, I'm the one. And they left. Well, they didn't even realize that all they were doing is they pay themselves the non-taxable benefits. Yeah. And, they just didn't take the time to understand with you. So they went to somebody else who did the TL2. He probably saved himself maybe $1,000 on accounting fees, and paid an extra
$9,000.
10 grand, 12 grand, or whatever, 11 grand in taxes. Which is unfortunate. So if this is your business, and your business, you have to understand where you're susceptible to taxes, and where you're potentially not. And is this a commercial? Yeah, it's probably a commercial. But you're right at the end of a Canada Pension Plan thing. Yeah. If we did a little bit right at the beginning, but this is the only thing that really. This is the reason why I do podcasts. Is we don't have sponsors. We're not looking for Michelin or Goodyear or anything like this. Our firm is the only one that sponsors these podcasts. And realistically, I want to save the independent operator industry $1 billion. And if I can't do it myself personally, we'll just see if we can get our software out there so that you can still keep your accountant doing it. And it should be little to no difference at all. Maybe even it's somewhat easier for them for your tax preparer rather than using whatever QuickBooks or Sage or whatever in there. So that's pretty much it. Canada Pension Plan, long stuff. Are we encouraged or discouraged?
Encouraged.
Encouraged. Oh, good.
I think so.
Yeah, right on. There's more and more people. I would say the vast majority of my clients, shouldn't say it, not the vast majority, probably the majority, are shooting for retirement around 70. That's the general knowledge. Now, there was a whole bunch that left in 2022-23 because somebody paid them an outrageous amount for their truck, and but more than likely, they'll probably be back. At least half of them will be back because it's expensive to retire, unless you're dad who doesn't, who reuses pencils until there's nothing left. No, he's good. I dedicated our second, my second book to Dad.
Yeah. Oh, did you?
And I told the story right at the beginning, why I dedicated it to him, and that's the story where he argued with the bank for 3 hours to reverse 11 cents worth of service charges. And he was on the phone for 3 hours telling them at the Royal Bank to reverse 11 cents worth of service. And just, we always used to, that's less than, it's 4 cents an hour return on your investment. We said, "Your dad, we'll give you a quarter. You can come and cut our lawn. Give me a raise." He laughed. I thought it was funny. Yeah. It's the principle. It's the principle.
Yep. And sometimes it is.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. I would, but it's expensive living by principle sometimes. There's some things that I say, you know what, by principle, I'm going to do this. My ROI is 0 or negative on it, but you got to live by principles.
Well, everything costs, and your principles. Yeah. You live by your principles, and you know that there's a cost and a benefit, and the benefits in your mind should outweigh the costs.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know that there's always a cost somewhere along the line, no matter what you do. Yeah.
Well, I have definitely learned a lot yesterday and today.
Good stuff. All right,
awesome.
We'll cut her down. Subscribing to this channel provides you regular access to professional advice on independent operators. If you want to support us, like, share, and turn on that notification.
Thanks for stopping by Making Your Miles Count. For further Making Your Miles Count productions, call us at 877-987-9787 or download us at makingyourmilescount.com.